The sky burned red the day the Dragon Queen screamed. Mountains cracked beneath her fury. Rivers boiled. Entire armies fled as her roar rolled across the continent like judgment itself. For centuries, dragons had been feared, but never had the world known grief like this. Her name was Azarinth, the flame sovereign, last ruler of the sky brood, and her children were dead. They had been eggs once, 5 of them, hidden deep within the volcanic chambers beneath Mount Kael'thar. The safest place in the world, or so she believed. But the war between humans and dragons had changed everything. A rogue kingdom, desperate for power, had sent soldiers and mages into the mountain. They did not survive the attempt, but the eggs did not survive either. When Azarinth returned from her patrol of the skies, she found only shattered shells and scorched stone. No heartbeat, no warmth, no future. She screamed until the clouds split apart. The Dragon Queen burned cities, shattered armies, and turned entire kingdoms to ash. To the world, she became a monster, a living apocalypse. To herself, she was only a mother who had failed. And then, she met a human child. The boy was small, too small to survive the wastelands where dragons ruled. He couldn't have been more than 10 winters old, barefoot and trembling, clutching a torn satchel against his chest. He had wandered into the scorched valley by mistake. When Azarinth descended from the clouds, her shadow swallowed him whole. The ground cracked beneath her massive form. Molten fire dripped from her scales. The boy fell to his knees. But he did not scream. He did not run. Instead, he looked up at her with wide, tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Please don't be angry." The Dragon Queen froze. For the first time in centuries, something other than rage stirred in her chest. She lowered her massive head until her molten gold eyes were level with the trembling child. "You should flee," her voice thundered, shaking the stones. "I am death." The boy shook his head. "I know what it's like when everyone you love is gone." Silence fell. Azarinth's claws dug into the stone. Images flashed through her mind, 5 small eggs, warm and glowing, now reduced to ash. How could a human child know such pain? She growled. The boy swallowed. "They burned my village. My mother pushed me into the river before the fire reached us. She told me to live." The Dragon Queen felt something crack inside her chest. This human did not reek of fear or hatred, only grief, raw, familiar grief. She did not kill him. Instead, she turned away and curled around him, her massive wings shielding his fragile body from the cold winds. That night, the boy slept against her scaled chest, and for the first time since her children's death, the queen did not feel alone. Days passed. The boy, his name was Iran, remained by her side. He spoke little, but when he did, he spoke to her as if she were simply another grieving soul. He told her stories of his village, of laughter, of small joys, of how his mother used to hum when she thought no one was listening. Azarinth listened. When he cried in his sleep, she warmed the stone beneath him so he would not feel the cold. When he woke frightened, she curled her tail around him like a protective wall. Slowly, something impossible happened. The Dragon Queen began to heal, but the world would not allow peace. Word spread that the Dragon Queen had taken a human child under her protection. Kings panicked. Generals rallied. They believed the boy was a hostage, or worse, a weapon. An army marched toward the mountain. When Azarinth sensed them, her rage returned tenfold. "They come to take you," she growled. "I will burn them all." The boy stepped in front of her. "No," he said softly. "Please don't." She stared down at him, shocked. "They will kill you." He shook his head. "Not if you don't give them a reason." For a long moment, the Dragon Queen stood silent. Then she did something no dragon had ever done. She listened. When the armies arrived, they expected fire and death. Instead, they found the Dragon Queen standing still with a small human boy at her side. "I will not burn your world," Azarinth declared, her voice echoing across the plains. "But harm this child and I will end it." The soldiers faltered. Fear turned to awe. Slowly, weapons lowered. That day, the war ended without a single blow. Years passed. The boy grew taller, stronger. He learned to read ancient runes carved into stone. He learned the old dragon tongue. And the Dragon Queen watched over him, not as a weapon, not as a pet, but as family. The world would come to know him as the child of flame, the bridge between dragon and human. And the Dragon Queen. She would no longer be remembered as the monster who burned kingdoms, but as the mother who chose mercy over vengeance. All because one small human boy dared to walk into the shadow of a grieving god and offered her something she thought was lost forever. Hope. The wind howled through the shattered valley, carrying the scent of ash and old fire. High above the scorched earth, the Dragon Queen descended. Her massive wings darkened the sky as she landed, talons cracking stone like brittle glass. Lava still clung to her scales, glowing faintly like dying embers. Her eyes, ancient, golden, and hollow, scanned the wasteland below. Then she saw him. A small shape, barely moving, curled against a broken rock. A human child. Azarinth's breath hitched. Humans did not come here, not after what she had done. Not after the world learned that her grief could burn empires to ash. Her instincts screamed kill. One blast of fire, one breath, and the fragile creature would vanish like smoke. She took a step forward. The ground trembled. The boy stirred. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his head. Dirt smeared his face. His clothes were torn and scorched. One foot was bleeding. Yet when his eyes met hers, vast, molten, inhuman, he did not scream. He didn't even try to run. Instead, he whispered, voice shaking, "Please don't be angry." The Dragon Queen froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with fear, but with understanding. She lowered her massive head, nostrils flaring as hot air washed over the child. One breath from her could melt stone, yet she held it back. "You should flee," her voice thundered, echoing through the valley. "I am death." The boy swallowed hard. "I know," he said, "but I don't have anywhere else to go." The words struck deeper than any blade. Azarinth saw it then, the hollow eyes, the way his hands trembled not from fear but exhaustion. This child had already lost everything. "How did you come here?" she demanded. "My village burned," he whispered. "Men with armor and fire sticks. My mother pushed me into the river and told me to swim even when it hurt." His voice cracked. She said to keep living. Silence fell. The Dragon Queen felt something twist painfully inside her chest, an echo of a memory she tried desperately to bury. 5 eggs, 5 fragile lives, gone, her claws dug into the stone. "You should hate me," she said. "My kind brings nothing but death to yours." The boy shook his head slowly. "I don't hate you," he said. "You look lonely." The words struck harder than any weapon. For centuries, beings had called her monster, demon, destroyer. No one had ever called her lonely. The wind died down. The fire in her eyes dimmed just a little. Against every instinct screaming within her, Azarinth lowered herself to the ground. Her massive body curled protectively around the child, creating a wall of scaled warmth against the cold night air. The boy stared in awe. "You're warm," he whispered. She said nothing, but she did not move away. That night the boy slept beneath the shadow of the Dragon Queen's wing. He shivered at first, then slowly relaxed as heat radiated through the stone. Azarinth remained awake the entire night, watching, guarding, remembering what it felt like to protect something small. When dawn broke, the boy stirred and blinked up at her. "You didn't leave," he said softly. "No," the Dragon Queen replied. And for the first time since her children's death, she realized something impossible had happened. The emptiness inside her chest hurt a little less. Far above, unseen by either of them, distant eyes watched from the clouds. Word would spread. A human child lived beneath the Dragon Queen's wing, and the world would not allow such a miracle to last. Morning light crept across the scorched valley like a timid guest afraid to stay too long. Azarinth, Dragon Queen of the Sky Brood, had not slept. She remained coiled around the small human child, her wings half unfurled, shielding him from the cold wind that swept down from the mountains. The world beyond her scales was ash and ruin, but within the circle of her body there was warmth. The boy stirred. He opened his eyes slowly, as if afraid the moment might vanish if he moved too quickly. When he saw the Dragon Queen still there, his lips parted in quiet surprise. "You stayed," he whispered. "Yes," Azarinth replied. The single word felt strange on her tongue. She was used to commands, roars, proclamations that shattered stone. This was gentle. The boy pushed himself upright, wincing as his injured foot touched the ground. Before he could fall, a massive claw slid beneath him, steadying his small body with impossible care. "Careful," the Dragon Queen said. The boy blinked up at her. "You didn't sound angry just now." Azarinth did not answer. She withdrew her claw slowly, afraid of how natural the act had felt. They sat in silence for a long moment. "My name is Iran," the boy said at last. "I forgot to tell you." The Dragon Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Names held power among dragons. "I am Azarinth," she replied. "You should not speak it lightly." Iran nodded solemnly. "I won't." He reached into his torn satchel and pulled out a small, battered piece of cloth. Carefully, he wrapped it around his bleeding foot, biting his lip as pain shot through him. Without thinking, Azarinth breathed softly. The stone beneath him warmed, easing the ache in his muscles. Iran noticed. "You're doing that on purpose, aren't you?" She paused. "Yes." He smiled, small and tired, but real. "Thank you." The words struck her harder than any curse. As the day passed, Iran talked. He spoke of his village by the river, of wooden houses and warm bread, of his mother's quiet singing when she thought no one was listening. He spoke of the night the soldiers came, how the sky burned, how screams filled the air, how his mother's hands shook as she pushed him into the water. Ajarinth listened. She did not interrupt. She did not look away. Each word echoed with memories she had tried to bury, soft shells glowing with life, the promise of flight never fulfilled. "Do you think," Iran asked quietly, "that they're lonely wherever they are?" Ajarinth felt her chest tight. "I do not know," she said, "but if they are, then they are not alone." Iran nodded, satisfied. That night he cried in his sleep. Ajarinth woke instantly, heart hammering as she heard the broken sobs escape his chest. Carefully, gently, she curled her tail closer, blocking the wind. "Shhh," she rumbled softly. "You are safe." The crying slowed. For the first time since her children's death, the Dragon Queen spoke words meant to comfort. Days turned into weeks. Iran stayed. He learned which stones were warm and which were sharp. He learned how to read the ancient symbols carved into the mountain walls, marks left by dragons long dead. Sometimes Ajarinth taught him their meaning. Sometimes she simply listened as he talked to the empty air. And sometimes she laughed. The sound startled her both. Dragons did not laugh. But one evening, as Iran attempted to mimic a dragon roar and failed spectacularly, the sound tore free from her chest, low, rumbling, filled with warmth rather than fire. Iran froze, then grinned. "That was a laugh, wasn't it?" Ajarinth turned her head away. "Do not tell anyone." "I won't," he promised. And for the first time in centuries, Ajarinth realized something terrifying and beautiful. She was no longer alone. But far beyond the valley, eyes watched. Dragons whispered. Humans plotted. The bond forming between a dragon queen and a human child would not go unnoticed. And when the world learned of it, it would demand blood. The sky darkened long before the storm arrived. Ajarinth stood at the edge of the valley, wings half spread, eyes burning like twin suns as the wind carried a familiar scent. Dragon blood. She knew that smell better than any other. They were coming. Iran felt it too. The ground vibrated beneath his feet as distant roars echoed through the mountains. He stepped closer to the Dragon Queen, his small hand gripping one of her massive scales. "Are they like you?" he asked quietly. Ajarinth's jaw tightened. "They are my kin," she said, "and they will not understand why you still live." The sky split open with thunder. Three massive shapes descended from the clouds, dragons of iron scale and blazing breath. Their wings beat like war drums as they landed across the valley, eyes blazing with fury. The largest of them, his scales dark as obsidian, snarled. "Queen Ajarinth," he thundered, "you disgrace the old laws." Ajarinth rose to her full height, dwarfing even him. "You dare speak of law," she growled, "after the slaughter of my children?" The other dragons shifted uneasily. "We did what was necessary," another hissed. "The humans breed war, they poison the world." Iran flinched. Ajarinth felt it. Her wings flared wide as she stepped protectively in front of the boy. "This one is under my protection," she declared. "Touch him and I will burn the sky itself." A shocked silence fell. No dragon had ever defied the old code. The obsidian dragon laughed, smoke spilling from his jaws. "You would choose a human over your own kind." "Yes," Ajarinth said without hesitation. The word rang like thunder. The air ignited. Fire tore through the valley as the dragons lunged. The earth cracked beneath the force of their fury. Ajarinth met them head-on, claws colliding with scales, wings tearing through smoke and flame. She fought not with rage, but with purpose. Every strike was measured. Every movement was protection. Iran watched from behind a shattered pillar, heart pounding as fire and thunder tore the sky apart. He wanted to run. He wanted to help, but he remembered her words. "Stay behind me." A dragon lunged for him too fast. Ajarinth slammed into it midair, crashing both of them into the mountainside. Stone exploded. Fire roared. She rose, bleeding but unbroken. Her roar shook the heavens. "You will not touch him." The remaining dragons hesitated. They saw it then, not a monster, not a tyrant, but a protector willing to die for something small and fragile. Slowly, they retreated. One by one, the dragons took to the sky and vanished into the clouds. Silence followed. Ajarinth collapsed to one knee, smoke rising from her wounds. Iran ran to her side, tears streaming down his face. "You're hurt," he cried. She lowered her head until her massive forehead touched the ground before him. "I am alive," she said softly, "because of you." The boy pressed his small hand against her scorched scales. "Then I'll stay," he whispered, "no matter what." The Dragon Queen closed her eyes. For the first time since losing her children, she allowed herself to believe in something more than grief. She allowed herself to believe in family. Far above, the clouds parted, and the world began to change. The world did not forget what it had seen. News of the Dragon Queen's defiance spread like wildfire, carried by frightened merchants, fleeing soldiers, and whispered prayers. A dragon had chosen a human. Worse, she had protected him. To kings and generals, that meant only one thing: a weapon, and weapons were meant to be controlled or destroyed. The first banners appeared on the horizon at dawn. Iran saw them from the cliffs, their colors snapping violently in the wind. "More people," he whispered. "A lot more." Ajarinth rose beside him, her wounds still fresh, scales cracked and darkened from the recent battle, her golden eyes narrowed. "They come not as warriors," she said slowly. "They come as hunters." Below, thousands of soldiers marched in formation, steel armor glinting beneath the rising sun. Mage priests walked among them, staffs glowing with runes meant to bind dragons. Ballistae rolled forward. Chains gleamed. Iran's chest tightened. "They're here for me, aren't they?" Ajarinth did not answer immediately, then she lowered her massive head until her eye met his. "Yes," she said softly, "and I will not give you to them." A horn sounded. A voice amplified by magic boomed across the valley. "Dragon Queen, surrender the human child and we will spare your life." Ajarinth rose to her full height, wings stretching wide against the sky. "No," she replied, her voice echoing like thunder. "Leave or burn." The generals laughed. "Fire cannot stop an army," one shouted back, "and you will not slaughter us all for one human." Iran stepped forward before Ajarinth could stop him. "Please," he called. "I don't want anyone to die." The soldiers hesitated. Ajarinth felt fear spike through her chest, not for herself, but for him. "Come back," she roared. Too late, a bolt of magic screamed through the air. Time slowed. Ajarinth saw the spell racing toward the small, fragile body she had sworn to protect. Something ancient awakened inside her. A scream ripped from her throat, not of rage, but of terror. She moved faster than thought. The blast struck her chest instead. The impact sent her crashing into the mountainside, fire exploding across the sky. Iran screamed her name. When the smoke cleared, the Dragon Queen lay motionless. The world went silent. The armies stared in horror at what they had done. Iran ran to her side, shaking her massive form, tears streaming down his face. "Please don't leave me," he sobbed. "Not you too." A faint glow pulsed beneath her scales. Her chest rose, once, twice. Her eye opened, dim but alive. A low, broken rumble escaped her throat. "I told you," she whispered, voice raw and cracked, "I would not lose you." The ground trembled. The sky darkened. Power unlike anything the world had seen before began to gather around her. The armies felt it. And for the first time in history, humanity understood true fear. The world held its breath. Smoke rolled across the battlefield as the Dragon Queen slowly lifted her head. The wound in her chest still glowed, cracked scales pulsing with raw energy. Blood, liquid fire, dripped onto the stone below, hissing as it struck the ground. Iran knelt beside her, shaking. "Please, please don't die," he whispered, his small hands pressed uselessly against her burning scales. The Dragon Queen's eye focused on him. For a moment the rage, the pain, the grief, all of it faded. Only the boy remained. "You are not alone," she murmured. Then the sky screamed. Power surged outward from her body in a blinding wave. The clouds split apart, spiraling upward as if pulled by an invisible force. The ground cracked for miles in every direction. The armies froze. The mages screamed as their spells shattered midair, unraveling like smoke. What is happening?" one of them cried. The Dragon Queen rose to her full height. Her wounds sealed with molten light. Her scales shifted, glowing with ancient runes long forgotten by the world. Wings stretched wide, blotting out the sun. This was no longer just a dragon. This was the true sovereign of flame. She looked down upon the armies that had dared to threaten her child. "You sought to bind me," her voice thundered across the land. "You sought to use fear as a weapon." She lifted her head. "I will teach you the cost." Fire erupted, not wild destruction, but precise and terrifying. The ground before the armies turned to glass. Weapons melted in their hands. Armor warped and fused to the earth. The soldiers broke ranks, screaming, fleeing in blind terror. But she did not pursue. Instead, the Dragon Queen turned back to the small figure kneeling beside her. Iran stared up at her, eyes wide, reflecting the firelight. "You're beautiful," he whispered. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Queen laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that shook the heavens. She lowered her massive head until her forehead touched his gently. "I am what you made me," she said softly. "Not a monster, not a weapon. A guardian. The fire around them faded, leaving the land scarred, but silent. Far away, the surviving armies ran, spreading a single message across the world. The Dragon Queen had awakened. And she would never bow again. Iran leaned against her, exhausted but alive. "Is it over?" he asked. The Dragon Queen gazed toward the horizon, where smoke still rose and the sky burned red. "For them," she said. "But for us, a new beginning has begun." The scorched valley slowly healed, rivers returned, and forests grew anew. The world whispered the name of Ajarinth, the Dragon Queen who had chosen mercy over destruction, compassion over rage. But no tale told the full story of the small human who had changed her forever. Iran had grown. No longer the frightened, barefoot boy who stumbled into her lair, he now stood tall, strong, and wise beyond his years. Yet he remained humble, still curious about the world, and still devoted to the dragon who had saved him. He had learned the dragon tongue, studied ancient runes, and even helped guide the rebuilding of the lands that had suffered from centuries of fire and war. But his heart belonged to one place alone, beneath the shadow of Ajarinth's wings. The Dragon Queen, now older in wisdom if not in strength, observed him quietly from her perches atop the mountains. Her scales had darkened in places with age, but her eyes retained the molten fire of eternity. To her, Iran was no longer a child. He was family. He was hope. He was the reason her grief had softened into purpose. "You've grown strong," she said one morning, golden eyes glinting in the rising sun. Iran smiled. "I had a good teacher." She rumbled softly, the sound of laughter and pride mingling. "Do not forget, human, your courage saved more than your life. You saved mine." He stepped closer. "You saved mine too, in a way." Word of their bond spread across kingdoms and mountains alike. Humans and dragons who once feared one another now cautiously approached the valley. At first with wariness, then with curiosity, and eventually with hope. Ajarinth had become a bridge, and Iran, her human companion, had become the symbol of peace. He walked alongside her on the high cliffs, listening to her stories of the past, of fire and loss, of battles fought and lessons learned. She, in turn, listened to him recount the small joys of the human world. Music, art, laughter, and the simple warmth of kindness. Together, they forged a new world, one where dragons no longer struck fear as mere monsters, and humans no longer trembled as helpless prey. They had rewritten the rules of an age-old war. One evening, beneath a sky painted in streaks of gold and violet, Iran placed his hand on her massive claw. She lowered her head so their foreheads touched, a gesture of trust, of respect, and of love. Not the love of romance, but a deeper, unbreakable bond, family forged not by blood, but by courage, loss, and unwavering devotion. "Do you remember," he asked softly, "when I first came here? How could I forget?" She rumbled, "You were nothing but a small, trembling thing, and yet you changed everything." He smiled, eyes reflecting the last light of the sun. "I think we changed each other." Ajarinth exhaled slowly, wings folding around him protectively. "Yes, and now the world will remember, not the monster, but the mother. Not the human alone, but the human who dared to hope." The wind carried their story across valleys and mountains. Bards and scribes spoke of them, of the Dragon Queen who mourned her lost young, and of the human child who refused to flee. Across time, their legend would be told again and again. A child who had wandered into a world of fire became a man who changed the heart of a queen. A dragon who had known only grief found her family again. Together, they showed that even in the darkest ashes, life could bloom, and that compassion, courage, and love could reshape worlds. The Dragon Queen and the human boy, now man, stood atop the highest peak, wings and spirit intertwined, looking out over the lands they had saved. And for the first time in centuries, Ajarinth felt peace, not because the world had changed entirely, but because they had changed each other. Fire end of series, the Dragon Queen lost her children, then a human boy changed her fate, HFY. Human boy changed her fate, HFY.